Come on in, folks.
The last one, sir?
Yes, mate.
All right.
Okay, we need to move in just a little bit more. We'll get everybody in and we'll get started. Good afternoon. My name is Chuck St. Laurent. I'll be your docent on the island tour. You are now in PRI-FLY, Primary Flight Control. Think of a civilian airport that has a control tower that controls the landing, takeoff, and taxiing of civilian aircraft. We do the same thing here. We control the launching off the bow and recovery from the stern. The man in charge sits in this chair. He's called the Air Boss, Senior Naval Aviator. Could be a naval flight officer. He's in charge of all Midway aircraft once they leave the ship within 5 miles at an altitude of 2,500 feet. He's also in charge of approximately 250 people that work on the flight deck during flight operations. He's assisted by a gentleman who sits next to him, and he's called the Mini Boss. The Mini Boss is in training to become the Air Boss. One year as the Mini, then he moves over and becomes the Air Boss. Since the chairs are so designed that the Mini is mainly concerned with launching of aircraft, the Air Boss with recovery. So if you don't make any adjustments up here for launching of aircraft, but we do for the recovery, I will speak to the recovery of aircraft. Now, the first thing the pilot's going to do when he's astern of the ship, getting ready to come back aboard the ship, he's going to align his aircraft up with the center line of the angle flight deck. The angle flight deck is 13 degrees off the center line, and if you look down on the flight deck, you can discern it because the center line is painted yellow and white. And if you look to your left and you saw that F4, number 102, you can see his nose wheel is right on the center line. So that's the first thing the pilot's going to do to prepare to come back aboard the ship. Second thing, he's going to be looking for a series of lights. Those lights are going to come from a Fresnel lens system. That Fresnel lens system is on the port side between the white and the brown helicopter. What the Fresnel lens system does, it emits a beam of light into space at an angle of 3.5 degrees. We're going to call that the glide slope path. When he makes his final break astern of the ship, he aligns himself with the center line. He sees the lights. He calls out ball, B-A-L-L. That tells the Air Boss here and the landing signal officer back on the port quarter, I see the lights and I will control my aircraft accordingly. And what he wants to see to make sure he's on the glide slope, he has horizontal lights that are green. And then there's 5 vertical lights. He wants to see the orange light right in the middle of the green lights. If he sees that, then he's on this glide slope. And if he continues to maintain that, he'll have a successful recovery back aboard the ship. If he sees the orange light above the green lights, he's too high, reduce power. If he sees the orange light below the green lights, he's too low, add power. And if he sees the 5th light, which is red, add lots of power, because he really is very low and he could crash into the stern of the ship. And we don't want that to happen. When you think of all the different aircraft that can be recovered aboard the ship, and think of a pilot sitting in his seat, you'll see that the distance between his eyes and the bottom of his tailhook is different for every aircraft. So, depending upon the type of aircraft that be recovered, we're going to make a minor adjustment to this glide slope path. If we have the F4, and we do it here at the Fresnel lens control panel. If we have F4s coming in, we set it for the F4s. A6s, set it for the A6s. And the reason we do that, because we want that aircraft, when he passes over the stern of the ship, we want him to be 10 to 12 feet above the stern of the ship on the glide slope path. If he does that, be very successful in engaging one of those arresting gear wires. We have 3 arresting gear wires going across the angle flight deck, hydraulically controlled by engines beneath the flight deck. You can't see those. We make the setting for the maximum weight of the aircraft to be recovered. We don't make it up here, we do monitor it here. So as the aircraft is coming in and the tail hook engages that arresting gear wire, what's going to happen? He's going to start pulling that wire forward. Well, those hydraulically controlled engines beneath the flight deck are going to control the rate of that wire going out, such it'll bring the aircraft to a complete stop after he's traveled 340 feet down the angle flight deck. Comes to a stop, drops the wire, raises his tail hook, folds his wings, takes a right-hand turn, and parks. To keep track of what's taking place, we have a status board here. It pulls out and locks in place and it lists everything that's going to take place during flight operations. The individual behind the status board maintaining it must write what? Backwards. Not too difficult. Okay, we're going to go forward and down one ladder, going back out the same door you came in to the chart house and talk about navigation. Please use the handrails, and sometimes it's easier going down the ladders backwards than forward. So follow me, please.